accelerated growth of the economy that's wrapped around the information services that we've heard so much about, that we're really in the, whatever our business card says, and then in the information business. I think one of the quotes from Mr. Quigley this morning. So at the bedrock of what's happening here with the EastWest Institute is to start a dialogue. I was struck as a officer of Huawei that in the many discussions we referred to the outside of North America as the bad operators or the bad components. It's a broad brush that's used when we can't be specific of where the threats are coming from and why those threats are coming at us. And what we tend to do is generalize, and that generalization of what the threat is or where it's coming from is in fact stagnating, if you will, progress. Now, I want to say that also at the very end of Mr. Quigley's remarks was what I think is at the epicenter of why we should solve this problem and bring the resources and the knowledge to it. And it is singularly this. As we look at the global liquidity crisis, which had a near paralytic event on our global economy, and the amount of resources that were poured into that global liquidity crisis, at its epicenter was a crisis in confidence. You can trace it back to perhaps the Lehman transaction. You can trace it back to a few places, but at its epicenter was a crisis in confidence, and it has cost the consumers and governments of the world vast sums of money to rebuild that confidence and to rekindle that. I think that at its core, the crisis of confidence that could ensue on a planetary basis around the cybersecurity, around the cyber infrastructure, identity management, could make that look like child's play in terms of the economic impact to our society. So the epicenter of this is to avoid that confidence in crisis that we've seen, crisis in confidence, excuse me, well, reverse that. Anyway, that we've seen in the liquidity crisis. So when you take, if I may for a minute and speak from the Chinese perspective, the quarter of the world's telecommunications spend exists here in North America. Our organization has been able to achieve kind of a 1, 2, or 3 position on a planetary basis without largely access to the U.S. market. And when you look at the cause of that, it comes down to that there isn't a dialogue, there isn't a framework for measurement, and there isn't trust between that these technologies that are built in China are safe and secure for building infrastructures here within North America. That's at the epicenter of it. I believe that as we take and go back to supply chain, every manufacturer in the world sees algorithms developed in Eastern Europe. We see software developed here in the US and in India and in China. We see hardware manufacture. So getting transparency in that supply chain and being completely transparent around your product, your service, and your process is a starting point. And for us, we've engaged Electronic Warfare Associates and Telcordia, two venerable, I guess, does the red light mean that I'm done? Okay. I'm just showing you that I'm really sharp on this kind of stuff. Anyway, the point is to create a transparency and a dialogue, which is starting here, that can begin to build those trust frameworks so we can continue to stimulate the global economy and not stagnate it and unwind into a global liquidity crisis based in lack of confidence in information systems. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matt. I think you mentioned something which is very important as a component of building this trust and then checking, which is transparency. Let me take you to another dimension of it. Do you think that new technologies that we are approaching can contribute to our checking process or building the trust? I mean, your company, together with the Nokia's, Alcatel's, Ericsson's of this world, you are building the telecom infrastructure. And what we are seeing now is what we saw a couple of years ago, I think, on just the simple voice and then voice and data. We saw GSM, 3G, or CDMA, and then we saw the upcoming of the WiMAX, which didn't happen probably on the scale that some were expecting. But there's a new technology coming, LTE, that everybody wants to embrace because of the very high qualities of the new technology. Do you think that that technology can basically come with more trustworthy, creating more trustworthy systems or structures or infrastructure? I mean, can the technology, new technology, contribute in that?
So, three thoughts. Number one, how you put things together is of equal importance as what you're putting together. Mr. Carl Rauscher from Bell Labs achieved the first 6 nines architecture in the world, and it was largely how things were put together and the process with which they were put together that achieved that kind of reliability performance. And so the underlying technology, point number 2, the underlying technology can contribute to the reliability and the transparency because of the speed of compute and software and the ability in what I believe is the way forward, which is an open set of architectures where you can have heterogeneous networks and different checkpoints in the infrastructure itself and automation to trust but check that it in fact is doing what it was built to do. So for the technology itself, yes, the emerging technologies, LTE allows the construction of wireless networks in a different way, in a much more open and heterogeneous way than did the prior 3G infrastructures. So it will in fact open up the ability to insert testing and checking from the technology perspective. But third is the people. So technology itself is inadequate to address the building of infrastructure. You have to have clear processes to where, as you were saying, in the supply chain, in the repair cycle, in new software releases, you have to be able to ensure that during those processes that nefarious activity doesn't take place that wasn't there when it was put in originally. So the technology, the emerging technologies, particularly LTE, are helpful but not sufficient to raising the security of infrastructures built today.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. I think we tried to explore some of the aspects of building trust as a tool, how to build international cybersecurity consensus trust on corporate side, on transparency, and how to use the new ideas, new technologies in order to, from day one, to make them safer. Let's try to look at the same question from a different angle, which is legal and international. And I'm going to ask Jody to come up with her remarks. She is running a company which is called Global Cyber Risks. I think it's interesting. I'm sure that your business is growing recently quite fast. Because if we go back probably 10, 15 years ago, it's the awareness of the international or companies or community or the governments was not focused on cybersecurity, like we were not focused on climate. The question here is that I think what we are doing here